the tip of the week. This is something really important, and the tip of the week, we were thinking about it because of the questions we see in the Facebook group, and David and I were kind of wrestling and grappling with what we should cover this week. And we have a 7-step pre-launch checklist for membership websites. But the good news is about this checklist is it doesn't apply just to new sites, actually. You can refer back to this checklist at any stage of your of how your community is developing. So Dave, can you tell us a little bit of who this guide is for and what we can expect diving into the 7-step pre-launch checklist?
Yeah, as you mentioned, it's targeted more towards people who are just getting started with building their membership sites. However, even if you've had your site online for several years, maybe you're finding that your membership growth is beginning to plateau, or you're not quite sure what additional services or products you can provide to your members to keep them interested in your site and maintain them as members in your community, then you can always refer back to this checklist, if you will, and get a better idea of maybe what questions you can be asking yourself, what elements of your community you should review, how you should be thinking about certain aspects of your directory site. And hopefully all of these different things will give all of you some greater insight into how to not only start a membership community, but also how to keep one growing. And so this checklist includes 7 questions that you should be asking yourself. Again, these are the ones that you want to ask yourself when you're first starting your membership community, but it would be a good idea to continue to ask yourself these same questions throughout the lifetime of your membership community. So the first one would be, what problem will you be solving? That's the main question, that's kind of the thesis of your directory website.
That's awesome. And actually, rather than going through them one by one here, let's just dive in because we have more detailed notes on each one of these. But yeah, the biggest question we all need to ask ourselves is what problem we're solving. And sometimes we have a good idea, but we really, in our minds, we've answered this question. But it's really, really important to put pen to paper and to think about what problem you're solving, and also the specific words and terminology and phrases you're going to use when you're identifying exactly what the problem is. So 90% of the time, anyone creating an online community is targeting a specific group of people or a niche or a certain locality or area or region. For example, Colette's website is targeting businesses and people in the Selwyn area in New Zealand. So first we want to do is find an audience that's going to potentially convert into subscribers or members or followers or people who are going to be part of your community. So you can ask yourself what industry you'll be targeting. What are the difficulties people in that industry may be having? And it doesn't always need to be businesses. It could be consumers. I've seen tons of websites targeting moms or dads, or just everyday people. They're not necessarily businesses, but you have to identify what problem that they're facing, and also what other options there are out there for them to have a solution to that problem. And the most important thing is, like David said, you want to have like a thesis argument for your site. And part of that is picking one main issue that your website will address for that market. You can always broaden it later, but if you have one main issue, that's going to help you identify the problem you're solving and how you can articulate that your website is going to be solving that problem.
Exactly. So the second question you need to ask yourself is not only is there a problem, but is that problem recurrent? Is there a possibility that you can kind of, and we'll get into this term in the next couple slides, but can you drip feed content and resources to your members as well as your website visitors to keep them coming back for more? You don't want to be a one-stop shop with your website. It's kind of like with like when you're trying to start up a conversation with somebody. You don't want to just ask them yes or no questions, because that's a quick way to just end the conversation right there. You want to ask them deep conversations that can keep it going and kind of have some banter back and forth. That's kind of the same way you want to think about a membership community. You want to be able to consistently solve either a recurrent problem or multiple problems. that your target audience is facing. And of course, along with that, you want to be a valuable resource. So you don't want to provide a poor experience that people, while they may be getting something out of it, they may still end up choosing a competitor or just saying, you know what, it's not worth my effort. So you want to be a valuable resource, easy to use, easy to understand, and you want to provide consistent resources and information to your audience. And that's essentially what leads to a successful membership website, is providing that long-term support. If people are going to be purchasing a membership on your website, or if you're providing them with free memberships and then having, pay per lead or additional forms of revenue that way, the only way to keep them as members on your site is to continue to be a useful resource to them. It's like Netflix. If Netflix just stopped releasing new movies, new TV shows on their platform, they'd lose a lot of their subscribers because, well, there'd be nothing left to get out of it once you've exhausted those provided resources. So you want to consistently be providing your users something of value.
And that could be content. It can also be providing businesses with leads. So you just have to figure out what people will always be continuously be hungry for, and that's what you or your website can provide to that audience. Number 3 is actually pretty important. Is your solution efficient? Meaning, are you able to, one, turn a profit where you're not expending more resources than you're giving out to your community? So a lot of membership websites are drip feeders, meaning that if you want to provide your community with some fresh content that you can, that's not taking all your time to create, because then you wouldn't be able to do other things. But also for your members that are digesting the information, it's easy for them to execute or gain a benefit from the solution that you're offering without too many complications or wasting too much of their time as well. So you really want to make sure you're a consistent resource for your users and your members, and you don't want to be a one-stop shop. You don't want to necessarily solve the problem in one shot. But for example, if someone needs leads, they don't need leads one time, they need them continuously. So you want to make sure that you're able to capture leads, for example, from consumers, and then efficiently distribute them to your members. That's what BD's awesome at also as well. But then your members can quickly purchase the leads, contact the consumer, and that is an efficient system for solving a problem with your solution. So yeah, your solution, you have to ask yourself, does your solution benefit your users while requiring them to consistently return to your website for your services? So you can do proper research and determine if you want to provide a constant useful feed to your users, because the information we dispense to the users as well, it keeps your brand top of mind for them, and also it brands you as an industry thought leader and authority within your industry for being an expert for the problem that you're solving for your community. So when we talk about efficiency, it's on both ends. It's on your ability to provide the solution for the problem, and for your community to absorb and execute with that information. You want it to be efficient. Simple example, Uber. Uber, you can push 2 buttons and the driver knows where to go, and you know where to go, and the ride is completed. So that is an efficient marketplace.
Exactly. The follow-up to that would be that you need to identify that niche problem that has a healthy audience. We talk about this a lot. When you're first starting out with a new directory site, you do want to find a specific niche, because it'll be easier to infiltrate a target industry if there's not a whole lot of competitors. For example, if you're trying to start an e-commerce site, now it's going to be pretty difficult when you have competitors like Walmart and especially Amazon and all these other e-commerce marketplaces. However, if you can find a smaller niche where there is an existing problem and an audience that's willing to pay for a solution to that problem, then that's the gold mine right there. So you don't want to have such a broad target industry that it's hard for you to infiltrate and hard for you to grow, but you also don't want to be so niche that there's hardly any room to grow in it.
Yeah, and then following up with that, if you can successfully identify that there is an audience, the question is, are they willing to pay? Because again, if you're going to be providing resources, creating content, expending energy and resources for your project, it helps to get a return so you can keep the wheel spinning with your project. So you have to find out, is the audience willing to pay? The ultimate goal here is to generate revenue for you and your organization. So your website is a product. People are going to interact with it. People are going to look for information in your website, look for your website to do certain functions. And you need to provide a worthwhile transaction for your members to want to take their wallets out and actually pay for something. So a lot of that is setting up your site with the right words and verbiage that emotionally connect with people. So part of getting people to pull out their wallets is marketing. There's psychology behind it. You have to motivate people. You have to give them a reason, create a sense of urgency, all those things that make people want to buy or feel like they need to buy things. Sometimes it could be out of necessity that they need your service. Sometimes it's to people go to movies, they spend money at the movies. That's for a joyful experience. So you have to figure out if your audience is willing to pay for what you're offering. So some things that you can offer with your Brilliant Directories website, obviously, is you could provide your members with leads, access to premium, exclusive industry-related content. You can help increase their online visibility by providing them with profiles, allowing them to publish photo albums, and then also additional advertising opportunities. Maybe they want to purchase an additional banner ad slot on your sidebar, on your header or footer. There's tons of things that you can offer to your audience. We just need to figure out, are they willing to pay for it? Does your site have a high enough perceived value where people are going to want to engage with your site with regards to actually paying for something?
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point that I wanted to touch on. In terms of thinking of your directory website as a product, and generating revenue, there's two forks in the road that you need to address. One of them is that marketing psychological aspect of it. That's what kind of gets your website visitors, and more specifically your members, in the door. That's what immediately gets them attracted to what it is you're offering. It's what piques their interest. How you sell yourself, it's kind of their first impression. And then after that, you ultimately have to keep them happy and interested and providing value. And so that's where identifying the correct solution comes into play. So you have to have those good marketing elements to provide them with a good first impression of your product. And then you have to have that valuable solution that keeps them coming back for more. And if you don't have that correct solution, then you may find yourself losing members. So both of those aspects are equally important.
And also on this topic, because this is one of the most important things, is the audience willing to pay? They probably are, but to make sure that they pay, feedback is important. And when you're asking their users what their problems are, what solutions they wish existed, we want to regurgitate the same words that they're using onto your website to make that emotional connection, so they know that your website is talking their language and your website is more in line with the way that they're thinking and their thoughts. So I go to a lot of sites. People are sharing their sites in the Facebook group, and their main title on their website says "Search for members now." That's the most generic thing. That's incorrect. You don't want to do that, because that doesn't help your site have a higher perceived value of what its mission and purpose is and why it exists. So you want to make sure at every turn of your site you're creating an emotional connection. I'll show you a very simple example. Before the webinar, Esteban and I was just checking out the BD Blocks website with him, and this button up here said register free, and the red button up there. So register free is fine, but I want to start building pages if I'm on the BD Blocks pages. So I recommended to kind of just update the text here to start building pages. Now, that was just a few moments ago. I don't know if it's actually having an impact on getting people to click that button, but theoretically, start building pages would probably resonate a bit better with someone who's coming to a landing page builder site rather than register free. You don't know what you're registering for. Just a small tip there.
Yeah, I think with the big thing with that element of it, and that button text example is you have to place yourself in the shoes of your website visitor. You might know exactly what it is you're offering, and either you might think you know or you do know what the problem in the target industry is for the audience, and you may be providing that solution. But if they come to your website and they're not automatically in that same mindset as you are, then you may be losing out on some conversions there. So you have to always put yourself in the shoes of your website visitor, your members, your users, and cater everything on your website towards them. You have to assume that they may not know everything that you know. So going into this next step number, or this next question number 6, are you capable of reaching that audience? Here's a really good question at the top of this slide. If you have the perfect product, but nobody knows about it, is it going to sell? Obviously, the answer to that is no. So maybe you've identified your target audience. Maybe you've identified the problem that they're facing. Maybe you've already launched your website and you have that solution for them. But if nobody knows about it, you're not going to get any members. You're not going to be generating any revenue. So you have to get the word out about your solution, about your community, your directory website, whatever it may be. So in order to do that, you can market to them. We've gone over this quite a lot of times in our previous webinars. There's many ways you can market a directory website. You can use online ads. You can publish blog posts and create ads for them on social media. Depending on what your target industry is, you can use Facebook, Instagram, Google ads. It really depends on the target audience.
Here's the part where I see most people getting stuck is, again, it's really easy to set up a site these days, but the problem is getting stuck in the setup and the design stage. Generally speaking, most of us are not online marketers. We have an idea in our head of an industry we want to solve a problem for, so we go ahead and we set up the site, and exactly what this slide says, are you capable of reaching that audience? Most of us don't have, especially if this is our first website, don't have that experience of online marketing. My recommendation is don't shy away from the ability to try and reach your audience. I have 2 suggestions. One, don't burn cash on advertising if you're unsure of what you're doing and you don't have a proven funnel for attracting people to your site, capturing them as a lead, and then a follow-up process to eventually convert them into a free or a paying member. What I recommend is doing a little bit more grassroots. Start a Facebook group, put a banner of the mission and your purpose and why you exist, and you're getting people in this industry, and you have a goal to solve problems X, Y, and Z, and just get people behind your mission and your cause, and you can build a following organically that way. And that's probably the best way to start reaching your audience. It might be a bit slower in the beginning, but you can actually interact with real people. You can engage with them, get their feedback, figure out the words they're using to describe their problem, and that way you can refine your solution, so when you are ready for paid advertising with online ads and things like that, you know that you're going to be laser focused on converting those people with a proven funnel. So save your money, try to go grassroots, don't shy away from this part of your site. Try to wrangle up people in the industry. Facebook group is the best, is a good way to go. Depends on your industry, but generally speaking, Facebook groups have been very effective. You just have to explain your mission and your purpose and give people to click that join button in your Facebook group, and that's a great starting point. And again, it's free to set up and doesn't require too much of your resources. And then lastly, another way to reach your audience is an easy way to reach your audience is create useful blog articles for that industry, and then you can share those articles online in other communities where your potential audience is. Again, that's low cost, a little bit of time it takes, and it's a good way to start introducing your brand to your market. And then lastly, the most important thing, and I think everyone in this call probably falls into this category that they are committed to their project.
Yeah, I think what you just touched on really rolls right into this last question really well. Taking kind of half a step back to that marketing aspect, figuring out how best to get the word out about your website. I think if you're able to choose an audience and a target industry that you are passionate about, that you're familiar with, that you know kind of how the ins and outs of, that'll make it easier to identify how best to get the word out about your directory website. And never underestimate the value of word of mouth. If you can provide amazing support and a good value, and you're familiar with your target audience and the target industry, the word may be able to just kind of spread on its own initially, and that'll really help get the ball rolling. But yes, ultimately you have to be passionate about your project, especially if you're in it for the long run. You're going to need to be able to sustain a certain level of enthusiasm about what it is you're trying to build, because without that enthusiasm, ultimately that will show in your end product. If you're not constantly involved in what's going into the product, your members will see that. They may begin to lose interest. So for constant growth, you need to put in that constant work on your end. And like I just mentioned, as you start to gain momentum, it eventually typically starts to grow kind of like a snowball, especially with that word of mouth aspect. Never underestimate that.
And a lot of times what we talk about is getting off the hamster wheel. And again, it's really easy to stay in that design and setup phase of your site, but we have to cycle through the different aspects of our business, reaching out to the community, getting feedback, identifying a new problem we need to solve, creating a marketing campaign to solve that problem, whether it's creating blog articles, setting up landing pages, and just bringing more attention to your brand. And then you can always come back to setting up your site and tinkering a bit more with it and the design and the colors and things like that. But you really should, because a lot of us wear multiple hats for running our businesses. We have to make sure that we're always growing and moving forward and cycling through the different aspects of running the business, not getting stuck in one end. And that's part of the commitment, is committing yourself to even working on the parts of your business that are uncomfortable and that aren't the fun parts of the business. So we have to get out of our comfort zones and explore new ways to always be perpetuating your online communities forward.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of the conversation we had quite a few webinars ago with Patrick Brunel from Directory Gurus. They released a free course kind of walking you through the beginning to the ready to rock and roll stage of launching a directory website, from actually finding that target audience, finding the problem, reaching out to those potential members, finding out what it is that they're looking for as in a solution, trying to provide that solution for them, getting feedback. There's a lot of back and forth that's required in order to make sure that you're providing your members, your users, your target audience with the solution that they truly need. Like we've been discussing this entire webinar, you want to keep those members happy. That way you can maintain their membership on your site. And to do that, you need to get constant feedback, not only in the beginning stages, but also when years into after you've launched the site and everything's rolling smoothly. If there's any things that you can improve on them. But when you're first starting out, don't be afraid to just launch, get feedback, and from there you can iterate and kind of go back and forth until you've hit kind of a healthy stage and a happy medium.
Yeah, and the good news actually is we have like a kind of summary of this 7-step checklist. However, again, even if you're rocking and rolling with your site, this checklist is great just to realign yourself and refocus yourself with your community.